Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series Wearing Power Armor to a Magic School. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 7, All Talk, No Food. Thasia's return was marked by a similar reception that I had just experienced not just a few hours prior. However, instead of a bewildered and confused expressions, what I mostly saw were looks of utter disgust and abject horror. It was as if they were staring at some unseen monster hovering above Thasia, rather than her actual form. Having seen behind-the-scenes productions of heavily CGI-laden films, it looked as if they were all staring at a monster or a ghastly apparition that would be added later in post. Except this wasn't a film set, nor was it fiction. All of this, every second of every minute of the situation I found myself thrust into, was real. So I had to assume that there was some reason behind them staring above her rather than at her. Despite all of this, I ignored the crowds and the rest of the room as my whole world was once more squarely placed on the avian. My first action, as she sat back, was to make sure that she was all right as I reached out my hand towards hers, mirroring the same comforting gesture she'd done for me. There wasn't any sense of obligation, nor any sense of debt being repaid here. It was an outright sense of genuine empathy and compassion that just felt right to do. "Thasia, are you all right? Are you hurt?" I spoke, as my hands came into contact with her own. This clearly elicited some sort of reaction as the avian's feathers puffed up for the briefest of moments. "I am quite all right, Emma. Please, there is no need to bring more attention to the situation than there needs to be." She spoke in that same polite, admittedly aloof tone that I'd come to expect from royalty after binging shows like Inside the Palace and The Crown 9. "Are you sure you're safe because Princess!" Thalman leaned in close for a whisper, completely cutting me off, as he elicited Thasia's full attention. The princess cocked her head towards him in an almost pigeon-like manner in response. "Your man of my asthma is showing. Please keep it under control while we're still in public." The princess seemed to be even more visibly shaken by this, as she nodded sheepishly, closing her eyes and clenching her fists tight. "What?" I attempted to speak, but was shushed by the lupine, who continued to watch the princess with great intent. "You blind Earthrealmer!" Eleanor suddenly snapped at me, as it was clear there was something else going on here, something that my radiation scanner simply wasn't picking up. I'm not following," I replied plainly, turning to Eleanor with an unamused frown hidden under my helmet. "Play dumb, just play dumb, Earthrealmer. It's sure to get you places," the lizard continued, prompting me to suppress any and all desires to punt him across the room. I'll appease this little game of innocence and wanton lack of situational awareness. The princess, just look at her," he pointed at Thasia. "Her mana field, you see it. Or, heck, if you're one of the lesser species, you can still feel it, can't you? That radiance, that multicolored glow. Now, look above that. Don't you see the darkness? The shadows? Yes, Earthrealmer. Look, you see it now. Do you feel the ice-cold sensation on your skin when you stare at it long enough?" Eleanor's words were even more spiteful than before. It once again took everything within me not to ruin his day, or perhaps his semester, for good. But self-control was vital. I had to empathize. The man did almost get soul-bound, or whatever. There was the latent stress here, so I got it. In fact, quite ironically, this was the most solid piece of intel I got so far on this taint situation. So maybe I had to thank the lizard for his blunt explanation. Not that I would, of course. This was far from a thank you sort of situation. The IAS, the self-control situational awareness classes, were really coming in handy now. "All right," I responded simply, nodding without really expressing myself in any other way. Looking back at Thalman and Thasia, the wolf seemed to be eyeing this invisible mana field taint with great intensity. The princess, for what it was worth, seemed to be in deep concentration, her face similar to someone trying their best to calm down from a panic attack. I didn't want to interfere just yet, not when it was clear that both Thasia and Thalman seemed to be in the middle of getting whatever this was under wraps. So I shifted my gaze back onto stage. Or rather, I turned on one of my helmet's side view cameras so that I could see both Thasia's and the stage simultaneously. With no further names being called, I'd expected the faculty and professors to have shuffled away, but they didn't. In fact, they continued to remain on stage as it seemed as if they were preoccupied with the book. The book was brought to the very center of the stage and placed on a stark white plinth which glowed brilliantly. The professors quickly crowded around it in perfect circle, proceeding to whisper amongst themselves as they discussed the pages in length, flipping through each one, pointing and violently tapping at a few. This seemed to cause Thasia increasing anxiety, as evidenced by her shaking form. But I held my hand firm against hers, squeezing it gently. "Hey, it's fine. It's over, all right. Your magic thing probably did the trick, I'm sure of it," I spoke, confident, yet clearly lacking in the ability to really say anything for certain. This seemed to calm the princess down somewhat, as her feathers flattened, and her expression softened. Thalman moved away for a moment, his eyes narrowing just above Thasia, and nodded. "All right, you're fine. I can't see any more of the taint." He eyed me, then Thasia, and seemed to do a quick double-take. "Just don't let the Earth Realm become your anchor, princess. I suppose this is just a coincidence, but I'd recommend personal due diligence." Thalman spoke with a certain level of concern, as the princess reciprocated with a heavy nod. "I have my own training, Thalman, thank you. There is no need for speculation or over-analysis. This was just an outlier of a situation, and it's now clear. Let us focus on what's to come." The princess gestured at the stage, yet made no effort to remove her hand from my own. "Anchor," I parroted back, garnering a masked look of embarrassment from Thasia, as she moved to speak, but was cut off by a loud, booming voice from the stage. The professors were clearly done deliberating, and the book now placed back into its unassuming container. "With the rites of scholarship completed, and the ties having successfully been bound, it is time for orientation to commence," Mauntleroy spoke, taking a few steps back further and further into the crowd of professors, before disappearing entirely from view. A spike of mana radiation proved that something mana-related had happened, what I would assume was some sort of teleportation spell. The dean finally stepped forward after being in Mauntleroy's shadow for most of the ceremony. He stood tall, confident, unshaken by the recent turn of events, and maintained that reassuring smile that he held throughout everything. "With the recent unexpected developments involving the ceremony, it'll be reassuring to know that scarcely anything has changed for the orientation. So let us begin. This day of matriculation marks the first steps into your grand adventure into the world of magical arts. As is customary, however, a grace period of 5 days is provided between the moment you pass through the portals and the day of your first class starts. The Academy is nothing if not concerned about the health and safety of our students, and we understand that with the desperate mana potentials of each realm, a period of adjustment is required before we begin any magical studies in a meaningful capacity. So consider your next 5 days a period of respite." "Mana sickness, no matter what your parents have told you," the red-robed professor piped up from the back row. "There is no richer concentration of mana than the Nexus, so your mana fields will need time to adjust. Common symptoms of acute mana field adjustment sickness include nausea, vomiting, dizziness, intermittent loss of consciousness, and profound precognition. But this should pass in about 3 to 4 days. You are, after all, the best of the best. That is why your realms sent you, so your mana field resilience is not in question. Still, I recommend none of you treat this as a competition. There is no great honor in comparing mana field adaptability. Any activities which misappropriates the Academy's on-site mana pool for the purposes of childish escapades will be punished severely. Now, I'll let our great dean continue. Thank you, Professor Baldor." The dean nodded graciously at the red-robed professor. "Now on to more pertinent matters. As all of you may already know, we have a total of 4 houses within the Academy. And unlike what most may claim, every house is on equal footing to win the annual House Cup. So do not be discouraged on which house you are assigned to. House sorting will commence within the end of the 5-day grace period with a series of trials which shall be specified within the coming days, after which you shall remain in the assigned house until the end of the academic year, where you have the ability to change houses should you wish to do so. Now, each house consists of 5 peer groups. Each peer group consists of 4 to 5 individuals per group. Those seated at your tables will be your peer groups for the entirety of your 5 years at the academy. This will not be changed, barring exceptional circumstances. The dean took a moment to clear his throat before continuing. With house matters out of the way, let us move to matters of accommodations and quality of life. Each peer group shall be assigned a single dormitory. Each dormitory shall consist of at least 2 to 3 bedrooms. Dormitories are assigned at random per peer group, and students are encouraged to arrange matters of in-dorm room assignments on their own. The faculty respects the right of personal autonomy and decision-making of all students, after all. I couldn't believe I was hearing that from the mouth of a man who just soul-bound a quarter of the students in the room. The fact that he was saying it with such sincerity as well bothered me more than it should have. You can expect no less than 3 meals per day. You may choose to eat in the dining hall, or choose from a selection of room-serviced partial-course meals with the exception of weekday lunches. Additional food services, however, shall be available around the clock. Such is the privilege expected for the best and brightest of the Nexus and adjacent realms. Now this was certainly an upgrade from what I expected of the college life. Now on to academic matters. As Year 1 students, your curriculum is primarily focused around magic theory. However, practical applications are still expected, and will be part of your passing criterion for the tests and examinations. As first years, your classes shall be taught in the grand lecture halls. As all students will follow the same schedule in core subjects. Electives are commonly started in the second year and are not recommended for first years. However, should you believe yourself capable, you are free to inquire about the addition of electives any time during the first semester. First years will have a total of 2 teaching blocks per year, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon, though an extra 3rd teaching block for night magic lessons will be necessary for a few classes. There are 10 subjects that you'll have to master in your first year. Magic theory and mana field studies taught by Professor Vanavan, Nexus and adjacent realm history and politics taught by Professor Articord, Potions theory, potions crafting, and healing magic taught by Professor Balmore, mana field perception, light magic theory taught by Professor Multeroy, and finally physical education taught by Professor Chiska. The professors in question stepped forward. Vanavan I'd already met, the blue-robed professor. The same went for Professor Balmore, the red-robed professor. However, Professor Chiska and Articord were new. Articord looked to be a fox-like creature, as far as I could tell, at least given her robes covered most of her snouty face. Chiska, however, honestly, what I expected of a magical PE teacher. First of all, she was a literal cat person. Secondly, her robes were tailored in such a way that she could easily jump from stage and straight up into the chandeliers if she wanted to. In addition, she was also the only professor present to be beaming out a wide, welcoming smile to all the students. Vanavan smiled too, of course, but his was too polite of a smile to be compared to the likes of Chiska. I liked her already. It'll not surprise most of you to know that the Academy does not allow you to return to your respective realms over the summer or winter holidays, the dean continued, eliciting a few tired sighs from the crowd that were quickly silenced by a short shush from the red-robed professor. You will, however, be able to return for a total of 3 weeks in the transition period between the end of Year 1 and the start of Year 2. Provided, of course, that you do pass the course. If not, you shall remain here for remedial courses, but that shall be a topic of discussion for another time. The dean paused, as if to emphasize his point, before moving on just as quickly. Your summer and winter holidays shall instead consist of community service. As graduates of the Transgression Academy, we pride ourselves not only in understanding the fine arts, but likewise its practical implementation in real-world situations. We must understand the people we preside and rule over, and, as a result, we require at least 200 hours of active service in the guilds and adventuring halls in the lands of the Nexus. Here you will put into practice the theory and training amongst the honorable, chivalrous, and reputable heroes which grace our lands. There are no restrictions as to the utilization of your magic arts during these 200 hours. We wish to see students demonstrate their magical and martial potential to the best of their abilities. Nothing is off limits, save for loyalty to the crown, of course. But that goes without saying. The dean paused, as if waiting for one of the professors to interject, to which the excitable Chiska did without prompting. And I'll be in charge of the community service and outreach program, so if any of you kids want to get a head start, feel free to drop by my office. I have a large portfolio of the guilds, adventuring parties, and more, scattered across the 2,700 out of the 3,579 kingdoms, duchesses, principalities, leagues, and empires of the Nexus. So there's definitely something for everyone. Ever wanted to sail 900 seas to slay a giant great leviathan of the waves? Now you can. Ever wanted to do Crown's work and emulate a rogue wizard gathering forces for a rebellion? Well, here's your chance. Ever wanted to just slay a dragon? The whole room went quiet at that. A few students even admonished the very notion amongst themselves. I'm serious. It's been over 2,000 years since our last dragon slayer, and I'll be damned if I end my tenure without presiding over at least one more. The professor continued. It takes a special person to slay a dragon, and I name all of the 98 alumni who have, off the top of my head. Each of them have become legends, not just within the Academy's walls, but beyond. So if you want to join the gilded alumni of the Academy, this is also your chance. The professor's attitude remained the same jovial, excitable one throughout, only pausing for just a moment to lower her voice in a clear attempt to emphasize the next point. Also, if you're in a bit of a tough spot with your grades, this may be the thing to pick you up. Just saying, she spoke with a wink. Anyways, the possibilities are endless, so if you ever want to get a head start in your summer or winter outreach programs, feel free to drop by my office anytime, the cat spoke, or rather shouted, brimming with infectious energy. Thank you, Professor Chiska. Your enthusiasm for our community outreach programs has never been in question, so please, there is nothing to prove now, the dean finally interjected as he cleared his throat. Now I understand that some students are on the less adventurous side of things, so we have local outreach programs to our neighboring town of Ithilia, where less adventurous opportunities, such as bookkeeping and skilled apprenticeship opportunities, are plentiful. Ah, so there it is, the easy way out, the more posh and spoilt of the student roster. I guess I half expected that. The dean glanced back towards Vanavan, nodding once before turning back to the crowd to continue. All students are reminded that despite classes not officially starting until the end of the 5-day grace period, that there are tasks that must be completed beforehand. A letter detailing all these tasks shall be handed out to you shortly. However, I am pressed to inform you that tomorrow shall be a titular weapons inspection day, so for those of you who have crossed the portal dressed in ceremonial garb, armed with ceremonial weapons, you have until the stroke of midnight tomorrow to declare your weapons and have them assessed by the school's armorer. A genuine sense of concern flooded me at the announcement. Whilst the IAS's plan did include divulging the existence of my sidearm as a ceremonial weapon, the extent to which I had to explain, or perhaps even demonstrate it, was not discussed in the sparse instructions we received from the Academy before my arrival. Indeed, like most of the intel we were fed from the Nexus, it was written with no elaboration. I guess this was where my personal initiative came in. This concludes the orientation. All students shall now be permitted to retire to their dorms as they please, or stay for the late-night banquet. With those parting words, the stage simply vanished. There wasn't even a goodbye, a bow, or anything. What was once a solid structure of marble and granite simply disappeared, replaced by the same bare walls and large floor-to-ceiling windows that had been there prior to its apparition. I could review the logs, see if my senses corroborated what I saw, but at this point I couldn't give another fuck about this place's shenanigans. I was tired, and I could feel the last of my brain cells starting to fade into nothing, as I felt as if an entire edition's worth of D&D of material had been crammed down my throat in a matter of hours. Food sounded great at this point, as I saw platters of cloth-covered dishes arrive at our table in grand display of opulence. Each stone cloak was polished to perfection, so much so that I could see my reflection off of all the surfaces. A quick scan revealed no magic was involved, so this must have taken some serious work to prepare. With the swift removal of each of the cloaks by the likes of a Dullman, whose maw had begun to hang open widely, we were greeted with an array of dishes that belonged not just to a Michelin star restaurant, but an honest-to-God actual state dinner. From a beautifully seared sea bass with crispy skin drizzled with herbaceous chili oil, to steaks that had been beautifully cut and seared to perfection, dripping in a mixture of its own juices and some red wine reduction, to the centerpiece of it all, a massive turkey whose skin was browned to perfection. A verifiable garden's worth of grilled vegetables marinated in the turkey's juices, surrounding it like a work of art. Each vegetable hung onto its own little tiered platter and spun slowly in place. I instinctively took in a deep breath, expecting to take in the familiar and new aromas. My mind expected the cold evening nights just before Christmas with those roast dinners, or the family gatherings on Thanksgiving with the sumptuous smells of root vegetables, herbs, and turkey blending together. I expected so much, but all I got was filtered air, the same filtered air I'd been breathing since I put on the suit. My heart practically dropped. I felt my whole body violently rejecting what I was sensing, as I felt an olfactory equivalent of vertigo. I was seeing the food in front of me, but I couldn't smell any of it. I took another deep breath, out of spite, and smelled the same filtered air, the same air you'd find within the pressurized hull of an aircraft or a space plane. I stared at the food once more, this time in a fit of anger and frustration, as Thasia seemed to have taken it upon herself to serve me a sampler platter of all the bountiful masterpieces right in front of me. I looked down in utter dejection, holding a fork in my hand, in picking up the delectable slice of turkey, only to place it back down on the table. Is the food not to your liking, Emma? I understand sometimes cuisines from other realms may be different. It's not that, I answered back meekly. Oh, it's my sincerest apologies, Emma. The princess suddenly caught on to my situation, probably remembering what I casually told her about my condition. I couldn't blame her, though. It's not like she had any social training for table manners with a human wearing power armor to a magic school. It's fine. It's not your fault. I tried to reply back politely, as I rummaged through one of my pouches, producing a small tube of NutriPaste that I glared at with a level of disdain that I'd never felt in my entire life. I packed my own dinner. I could really go dragon hunting right now to relieve some stress right about now. End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, HenryTheRed, Casper Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.